right, so let's see here. We are going live. All right, so we have got David Osborn here with us. We've got a group, the room's kind of like real spread out, but of young entrepreneurs. And I just first off want to say thank you so much for taking time. And I
Mm-hmm. We lost signal. I think they did. I'm not 100% sure. It still says live on YouTube. So this is really fun for all our viewers on YouTube. God, my hair looks like a mess. Do, 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 do. So let's try texting her.
Let me see something here real quick. Participants. Okay, so that girl's there, Kennedy. If you ask Kennedy if she's still there.
No, nothing. No, Kathy's not in the meeting. No point in being live, right?
I don't think you can change that, unfortunately.
Oh, I just canceled it. Oh, maybe I didn't.
No, it shouldn't be. Yeah, she's here, so she can hear you. But they all left.
Did you set up a call with Johan, or were you just waiting for me to set up the call?
No, I'm trying to set up a call. I'm trying to talk to his lawyer too.
Why? What's the problem?
So what just happened for me? Well, I just can't get a clear answer from our lawyers on the trust account. I don't feel comfortable wiring until I can see and hear everything. I'm just driving, so I don't want you to have a background noise. Not sure what happened with Kathy. Oh, she's back.
Hey, Kathy, are you back?
hear us now?
I can hear. Yeah, I can hear you.
Beautiful. I'm so sorry about that. We went haywire over here, but
Hey,
we will get rocking. But I was sharing just really what I most admire is just watching, through GoBundance and everything that you do is just the focus of just abundance in all areas of your life, and really, really making it an intentional focus to not only go out and create incredible wealth, but actually live an incredible life, have an incredible family, take care of your health and the balance with that. And just so excited for these guys to get to hear some things. So let's see here. We're going to put you on the main screen. Everyone see here? All right, we're good. So we have a series of some of the questions, and we'll kind of open up here for people. But one of the things that I wanted to kind of just start with a little bit of background for you being younger and starting on your journey, what were some of the first mentors, influencers? What helped you get started on your journey? And not totally separate, when you really got things moving, you know, like what was it that helped you early on start succeeding at high levels?
So great question. How old's the kid in the white shirt? Right there, looking up right now. Yeah, how old are you?
I'm 18.
18. Okay, cool. And how about the dude to your left?
I'm also 18.
And the dude to your right with the glasses, and then the lady with the white shirt on. How old are you? 19. Oh my.
I'm 20.
All right, I'm gonna guess y'all are in the same range. You guys are awesome. Like you're way ahead of where I was. So my background, you know, I was a C student, failed my way through high school, kind of got thrown out of 3 schools. I had a lawn mowing company, which I enjoyed. I made a lot of money cutting yards. That was good. Then I went to college because my dad said, join the Marines, go to college or get out of the house. So I went to college and failed most of my classes my first couple of years, got through with a 2.3 GPA after 5.5 years. Really was just killing time in college. Wasn't sure what I was doing there. Always had a side gig, like a side hustle, you'd call it today, a job on the side. I enjoyed working simply because I got paid for it. I didn't get paid for homework. Maybe if I'd gotten paid for homework, I'd have done better. So my life was kind of a story of being lost and sort of like not self-directed, not kind of rebelling, if anything, against the norm, you know? And then I went and took a job selling computers door to door. So that was like a job where you'd have to walk into a skyscraper. It was the only job I could find after college, so it wasn't a very glamorous one. And I'd have to walk right by the no solicitation sign and go up to the secretary or the whoever was at the front desk and say, wow, that's a beautiful sweater. Who buys computers around here? And just try to like instantly disarm them with charm. I used to call it the puppy dog sell. The puppy dog sell is very effective when you're 18. It's like, hey, I'm really sweet and harmless. Could you buy something from me? And that's all I really had, you know, and that and a good, decent work ethic, kind of I didn't quit. So that was good. So I did that for a year, and then I hated the job. I hated my boss. There's a lot in that I'm not going to bore you with, but my roommate said, let's go hitchhike around the world. So I went hitchhiking around the world for 2 years and 3 months, basically hitchhiked up through Africa, every country in Europe, made my way to South America, got home dead broke. So I'm at minus $1,300 because I'd run up my credit cards. Lived on $20 a day, which is $7,000 a year. So it's not very much money. When I sold all my assets, I had $10,000. The ticket cost $3,000. I was supposed to be gone for 1 year, but halfway around, I met a girl that I dated for a while. She happened to have a little bit of money. So that stretched out the trip for about a year until she got mad at me and threw me out of the house. So I got home and I'm dead broke. So I got home. She was older too. I got home. I was dead broke. I got no money. I'm in debt. And my mom is a realtor. And I said, I never want to go in real estate. I didn't think it was a real job. But my mom's a realtor. She's an amazing woman, hardworking and incredible integrity. My dad was a soldier, a lifer, a 30-year Green Beret. She made more money in real estate after 2 years than he'd ever made in his entire career. And so I needed money. I needed work, right? And so I said, Mom, I'll come work for you temporarily while I look for a real job. That was it. I'll just come work for you temporarily in real estate. One of my buddies called me and said, hey, I need to buy a house. I drove him around for 3 weekends. We had a beer after every tour. He wrote a contract. I got paid $5,000. I'm like, whoa, maybe this isn't such a bad career. So I stayed in real estate. I got, kind of into it. And at that point, like I'm in sales, so I'm using the puppy dog sell, right? I even got a client to change my tire one time. I got a flat tire. I'm like, dude, I'm wearing a suit. Like, what am I supposed to do? So he changed my tire for me. And that's how effective you can be with a puppy dog sale. But then I started plugging into the classes they taught at Keller, and I was lucky to be a highly educationally driven company. And I think you guys are with one as well, but they were teaching us scripts and dialogues. And one of the things I noticed when I sat down with a client is instead of just being, hey, I'm harmless, could you buy from me? I'd start saying, hey, I'm going to show you some homes, but I'm not going to sell you on anything. I don't sell homes. I'm going to consult you through the home buying process. And so that one would disarm them, would put me into a position of a consultant. Then I would say to them, I'm going to tell you not to buy a home 3 times, and then I'll take my commission. What I was saying by that is if I disagree with the decision you're making on another line, I'd always say is you get to live in the house. I've got to resell it again. So I'm started positioning myself as a consultant to the individual on a transaction. And I noticed they looked at me with more authority. They gave me more authority when I had the right scripts. And of course you have to have integrity to what you're saying as well. So when I began to see a direct correlation between what I learned and the results I got, then I kind of like, oh, maybe this learning thing that I thought was a sham in high school and college, really just a way for elder people to torture me, is actually valid. You can actually learn things and apply them and be successful. And then I became addicted to learning. So long story short, in answer to your question, I was lucky enough to be at a company run by Gary Keller, who's a billionaire today, but back then he probably also had close to negative net worth. He was a teacher and a trainer on a consistent basis. There's all kinds of material you can read about Gary Keller. The One Thing. There's a podcast called How to Think Like a CEO. And then the other one for me was Tony Robbins, because also early in my career, that's why I said y'all are so far ahead of me. My career really didn't take off until my late 20s. Now, again, you could say that I had a lawn mowing company and I made money. That's all true, but it was just like chaos incorporated more than anything else. I was a hard worker and I was good at following the opportunity, but it was chaotic. I also felt like I procrastinated that back then. I felt like I wasn't very focused. I would chase too many rabbits. So Gary Keller taught me a lot of methodology. And then the second piece was going to a Tony Robbins seminar. And I just went to Tony Robbins a few times. Again, back then, Tony was famous, but not that famous. I mean, the room I went to when I first saw him had probably 150, 200 people in it, which for Tony today would be nothing. And then I went to several of the events and I learned to break wood. I read Unlimited Power. It's all about believing in yourself. Back then I had to learn how to believe in myself at a higher level, get rid of sort of self-doubt. And what I learned by that is I couldn't unriddle self-doubt. I just had to ignore it. So I'd have the doubts in my head. And to this day, I still get doubts and insecurities, but the volume has turned so low that what used to seem like the sun to me is now like a little match in the corner that's just kind of burning, that doesn't really bug me too much. So with Tony Robbins, you learn to sort of like smash the bad thoughts with the good thoughts and all this goofy sort of neuro-linguistic stuff, but it actually is effective and it does work. And then I had Gary Keller coaching me on scripts and dialogue. So I became really good at sales. We became the #1 sales team in the country. I'm still working for my mom at the time. But we went to #1 once I joined her. Now, the other piece of that is Keller Williams was a fast growing company and they were looking to sell franchises. And after selling for 3 years, making pretty good money, I was making low six figures, like I think 100 grand, maybe high 80, 90, 100 grand. So to me, that seemed like a lot of money at the time. But I was driving down the same street for the third time on the same day, saying the same thing to my third client. Like I had 3 clients in the same price range on one day. And I was like, man, there's got to be something more than this. And it just so happened that Keller Williams had 800 people when I joined. They've got 180,000 today. And they were looking to expand. So they wanted to sell franchises. So I just put my hand up and said, hey, I'll go buy a franchise. And with the backing again of my parents' money, we had no money. We were like the middle of the middle class, which I realized the middle of the middle class in America is like really, really good when you look at it globally. Having been in 70 countries, I understand that. But still, we didn't come from a lot of money, I guess is my point. And we just started opening franchises. And then I found, just like learning scripts and dialogues and learning how to be a better salesperson, there was a learning process on how to build a real estate business. So today I'm like one of the most learning-based individuals I know, which is ironic because I think I was voted least likely to succeed in one of my high schools. I used to smoke a lot of weed and pretend I was Spicoli from Fast Times at Ridgemont High, but you guys don't even know who that was. I would talk like this, man. Like I was so insecure. I just thought if I talked like a stoner, people would like me, but it didn't really make much difference to my social life. But back then I thought it might work. So, but today I'm like super focused on learning. I'm learning all the time. I'm listening. I'm 52 years old. I have 3 kids. I have a 10 and a 3-year-old living with me at home with my lovely wife. I have a 32-year-old. Actually, when I was 19, I had a baby. So who's 19? Raise your hand. Every time I talk to my older daughter, I'm like, go talk to a 19-year-old. And if you have any personal problems, that's how I was when I married you. Now, you guys, like I said, are way ahead of where I was. I was kind of goofy. But my oldest daughter is a therapist. She's an amazing woman. She's really, really great. Because if you have a kid at 19, they either go to jail or become therapists. I think that's the binary outcome of that. So she went the right direction. So today I'm just addicted to learning. I'm learning. I've got my body fat down from 19 to 9%. I'm reading all kinds of books on how to be a better father and how to be a better husband. We're reading Conscious Loving right now, which is a book all about how to just say what you want instead of having a fight. So instead of getting ticked off, you go, I'm feeling sad right now, because anger is the bodyguard of fear, right? So when you're angry, you realize there's something that scares you or made you sad, and then try to discuss it and be 100% authentic. So all of these things are only in my life because of this addiction I have to learning. My diet has changed. I eat more healthy now than I ever ate. We try to use the Socratic method with our kids where we just ask them questions. And then in business specifically, there's just a few key points that always work. Like for you guys, it's going to be prospecting, right? When I was in sales, it's prospecting. The reason salespeople make more money than almost anybody is because no one is willing to do that. It's hard to prospect. It's hard to walk through that fear of they're going to reject me. And then you change that over time and you're like, thank goodness, another rejection, especially a quick rejection, because I know that I've got to make 20 calls to get one sale. So if they give me a quick rejection, I can move right on to my next call. So it really changes for you 180 degrees. And that's hard to believe at times. It's hard to believe, especially when you're starting out, because it's so fearful to go knock on that door. And then they're like, get out of here, kid. Or I used to have people hang up on me. One guy threatened me, you get that, but then you realize it's just a call. It's not personal. It's not emotional. It's just a call. It's just one more off the list. Boom, you're moving on to the next one. And then you know that if you make 100 calls, you're going to get 10 sales or whatever it is. And you're like, okay, I got to make 200 calls. So that's why salespeople make so much money. And what's great for you and what was great for me is on that journey of dealing with all that rejection, first in the computer company where I had to do door-to-door sales, and then in real estate, which was slightly softer, by the way. It was probably worse than that other thing. But in cold calling in real estate, you sometimes find some weird humans, that's for sure. I don't think it's legal anymore, but we used to just call houses out of the phone book, basically. And one guy threatened to kill me one time. I was like, oh, that's nice. But in door-to-door sales, when you knocked and went in an office, it usually wasn't anyone threatened to call you. But I had a friend who was a repo man who's in sales, and one day he opened the door and a guy punched him in the nose and broke his nose. So he'd always tell agents, it's not like they're going to break your nose or anything. So, it's just rejection. And as you learn to thicken your skin, so I was lucky learning to deal with that, because the reality is life, everyone that you look at that rises up in life and achieves a tremendous amount of success, they get kicked in the teeth all the time. If you think about an athlete and all the mistakes they made, you think about a business person, you think about an author, a star, anybody that rises up has to deal with a certain amount of controversy, things that are embarrassing, things that are shameful, or others would think them shameful. And the whole thing is to learn to deal with that and process it and get immune to it, in the sense that you don't let it stop you. You might, look for the lesson in it. Like if somebody says something hurtful to me, I still go like, what did I do to participate in that? My first reaction is, something I probably shouldn't say over the airwaves. But then when I've calmed down and I think about it, I'm like, well, there's probably something in that for me. Like what am I doing that's putting that out in the universe such that has to come back for me? But getting that thicker skin enables you to have the opportunity to rise up and really have a way more enjoyable life. My life's incredible today, but it's only because of all the battles I went through early and the pain sometimes. Because to me, the pain is you've built this personality through childhood, and some of it just doesn't really fit the real world. Now, it works fine with a mom and dad who solve your problems for you or jump in or whatever, even if your mom and dad were a little crazy and you shaped yourself to deal with a parental situation. But the real world is not like the parental situation. There's commonalities, but it's not exactly the same. So if you get pain, sometimes you've got to shed a part of yourself and just let it fall away, like a snake sheds its skin, or like birds shed their feathers or whatever. And then a new and stronger part can grow in place. So once you deal with all that rejection, that's a big part of that. And I think I rambled. I don't know what your original question was, Kathy. I just rambled for a little bit.
No, it's great. We had someone ask, and this goes perfect. You were just talking about stuff that you overcame. What characteristic or personal attribute do you think personally propelled your success the most?
Two. One is learning based, like, stupid is doing the same thing over and over and getting different results. So you got to be a student of life and willing to learn all the time. And then second one is resilience. Just if you never quit, and that doesn't mean you shouldn't quit some things, because there are things that don't fit you, right? Winners quit all the time. Like if you're a professional golfer, you probably quit like hockey and tennis and all these other sports to focus on your golf. If you're, a lawyer, you've quit like the other opportunities, like to be an accountant or to be a business owner. So it's not about that. It's about not quitting on the one key thing that you really, really, really want to be good at. And by the way, the other definition of quitting doesn't mean you might not quit on Friday and say, I'm never going to this job again. And then you get up on Monday and go back to the job. And I know a lot of guys like that too. So it's resilience, which has a lot of names, and like persistence or tenacity. And then it's being a learning-based individual. And by the way, I ask successful people and have my entire career, and I'll go back to your mentor piece again in a minute. And I always say, what are the 3 traits that achieve success for you in life? And there's a variety in there, but one of them is always a version of tenacity or persistence. So I've had like, knowledge of my craft, hard work, all kinds of different pieces, charm, luck, there's all kinds of pieces, but everyone always has a version of, I don't quit. I don't give up. I just hang in there. And one of my favorite definitions of success, the most successful people, they say they decide quickly and they quit slowly. And people that have moderate success decide quickly, but they quit quickly. And then there's other kind that decide slowly. That's like the decide slowly and then quit fast. That's like the worst, because then you're taking forever to decide what you do. Your life, you take a year to decide, you go do something, and then a week later you quit because you didn't like it. So it's way better. And by the way, I've learned this too, because I used to wrestle over decision making. Is that the right thing? Is it the wrong thing? It's actually better to do 10 action items, 5 of them wrong and 5 of them right, than to do 1 action item correct. Because if you do 10, even if they're 50-50 and the percentage is lower than 100% correct decision, you learn from all the 5 failures. So you've picked up knowledge there, and you've had 5 wins. So it's way better to take a lot of action, keep momentum, keep moving forward, and not get into analysis by paralysis than it is to try to get the perfect thing or the perfect strategy. And for me, by the way, like I used to analyze stuff to death. I would get super lost in it, and now I do more in a year now than I did in a decade in my 20s and 30s. Like I get more done in a year than I did in 10 years because I just move.
And if you were able to go back to speak to yourself in your 20s, or even talking to these guys who are younger, and you'd have to say, if there was one thing that you could think of right off the top of your head in terms of really setting them up for success, whether that be personally, professionally, and or financially, you could answer all 3 or one of them. What piece of advice would you give to someone in their early 20s to set them up long term?
Yeah. So 2 things. One is who you hang out with really matters. Hang out with winners. By the way, you all are Cutco. I've got a bunch of, is that right? Is this Cutco?
Yeah. We got the Cutco crew.
It would have been terrible if it was something else, right? Like I'd have been, but no. So like Hal Elrod is my neighbor and a very close friend. John Berghoff is a good friend. Brad Weimer is a good friend. Tim Nicolai. I'm surrounded by Cutco guys. They're all in my life. John Vroman, Justin Donald. So I know a bunch of your guys, and they all hang out together. And guess what? They were all the top producers there. And that is that winners, winning is, what is it? You can soak it in through osmosis. So the best thing I did in real estate is I hung out with a bunch of top producers. And I went to seminars with top producers. I did masterminds with top producers. So I was really around massive producers all the time. And when you're around top producers, you soak in that way of being, right? You soak in their way of approaching life. I mean, one thing for sure, there's not a single top agent of real estate that overthinks things. Now, real estate agent producers sometimes have a problem with like business strategy, but they are freaking productivity monsters. They just get after it. So be around winners or people that have the habits that you want. Warren Buffett says, if there's something you want, go behavioral wise, go find 5 people that have it and just stick to them like glue. So that's the one piece, is your peers. And then the second piece is your mentors. You're always going somewhere in your life every minute of every day. You're either getting better or getting worse. Unfortunately, there's no stasis. It's impossible to have stasis. If it was, I'd have stopped 10 years ago when I was making $4 million a year and I was 10 years younger. So I had more energy. So that makes weird noise when you move that, by the way, but I can live with it. So like who you hang out with really matters. You don't get stasis. So you're either evolving or you're diminishing. You're getting better or you're getting worse. That's just life. So put yourself in a situation where you're constantly around people that are getting better, that are helping you to get better. And that ties to my second component, which is your mentors. Who are your mentors? Like I was a huge fan of Jim Rohn back in the day. Tony Robbins was good to a point. Like he got me to motivate myself, but then I had to go elsewhere to get business knowledge. I had Tony Robbins to this, back in the day, I used to spend $40,000, $50,000 a year on education when I didn't really have the money. Today, I spend probably $100,000 a year on education, but I have the money. I spent 50 grand to go hang out with Richard Branson for a week on his island, because when you're around mentors and mentees that can teach you and share something with you, it's worth more than anything, especially it's almost like you got to vibrate at that frequency to get that level of success. And especially if you have you know, like a willingness to be learning based, which is something I talked about earlier. When I sat with Richard Branson and he was working with his personal assistant, and I went and sat next to him and I said, "Do you mind if I sit here?" And Sir Richard said, "Just don't speak." And his assistant looked at me like, "No, just F off." But of course I paid money. So I'm like, well, I'm going to sit here and get my money's worth because I'm used to dealing with rejection, right? So I'm okay being rude and slightly interrupting that moment because I took all the scars earlier. So to me, that's not that big a deal. So I sit down, I'm rude, and I listen. And he's just going through his emails and he's emailing Sheryl Sandberg and different people. And he doesn't, he's got dyslexia, so he doesn't do his own emails. And I came back from that. I'm like, wow, I lose 90 minutes of my day every day going through my emails. I'm never going to do an email again. So I came back. That was the learning. So what was that worth 50 grand? I don't know. I mean, it was an amazing trip too. I got to play tennis and see a beautiful island, but the learning that I came back from was to stop doing my own emails. So yeah, so if you email me now, my team are reading it and they just tell me what people said and they try to sound like me when they answer.
Nice. Another question that we had was, how old were you when you made your first 6 figures? And how old when you hit your first $1 million net worth? What was the catalyst that helped you make that jump?
Yeah, so I mean, compounding is what occurred for me because I opened multiple franchises and at first they all sucked and I was struggling and they were all terrible. And I was basically bleeding all the money that I had into them and my parents' money and some other investors' money. And then suddenly one got better and then the other got better and then they all got better. So I had like 6 franchises at that time. Again, only got 6 because Keller was desperate to sell to anybody. Keller was pouring into me. And then they all turned around. And, you know, there's always a little luck that plays into life. And, you know, Warren Buffett will say that and Steve Jobs will say that. And when I talked to Richard Branson again, he said, people said I got lucky because I got out of records and into the airline industry at exactly the right time. And he said, it's true, I did get lucky, but you only get lucky if you put yourself in a position to get lucky, if that makes any sense. So I put myself in the position with these 6 franchises and they started getting better. And then 1 clipped to profitability and 2. And then all of a sudden, all 6 of them were profitable. And I was getting checks from 6 different businesses on a regular basis. And so I probably made my first 6 figures. Matt, what would you say? 30, 31?
31, yeah.
Probably 30 or 31. And then when did I hit $1 million net worth? 35 maybe?
I think, yeah, maybe earlier than that.
Yeah. So I don't know. I have a chart that I track it all. I've got that Social Security chart they track, which they shows your income for every year. So I've tracked that. So it took me about maybe 3 to 4 years. But again, why is that? Because originally I was automatically in business earned income. So the most important thing you can do is earn a lot of money. That's a great start. And then what matters even more than earning a lot of money is taking your excess capital beyond what you spend and investing it and holding it accountable for a rate of return. Raise your hand in here if you want to be financially free. Which one of you guys wants to be financially free? Oh, cool. All of you, except for that lady in the very back on the, oh no, her hand's up too. Okay, good. I got it. So it was hidden behind someone's hairs. I was going to call you out because I like messing with people, but you guys are all young and you're sharp and that's beautiful. And you're probably way smarter than me. I think the younger people today are so much smarter than we were in my day. We all had rebellion and stupid stuff to deal with. You guys are just like, hey, let's just get after it. It seems like, but so the goal is to make money, save money, and then investing that money so it creates free cash flow. And for me, that's real estate. Real estate is the everyday man's way of financial freedom. And that could be a single family home. It could be a duplex. It could be a fourplex. Because, so think of it this way, when the economy goes up and down all the time, but when it goes down, assets get cheaper and it can hurt you. But if you're not stupid and you're not over leveraged and you haven't borrowed 110 cents of every dollar in equity, when the market goes up, yeah, your job pay could go up, but that's all. What you want to have is like multiple assets that you've bought or parked. It could be a business, but businesses have a 10% success rate. Real estate probably has an 80 or 90% success rate. So you want to have, so let's say you had 5 homes and the economy goes up for 5 years, 10% a year. It's not just what you're doing personally that goes up. It's all these other assets going up with you. So you want to put yourself in a position to win. And the way you put yourself in a position to win is own assets that have some cash flow. And I know a bunch of guys worth, hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're all either started a business or they did real estate. But the real estate guys all will tell you, yeah, it was all pretty mediocre. It was a very small business until suddenly like the 2000s happened. So the one bit, whoa, hello, Matt, something just happened. Oh, no, we're good. So in 2000, like to 2000, actually from 97 till 2006, we had a boom right until the last crash. And this guy I know that had 2,000 apartments in Chicago, he's like, yeah, I was worth, 5, 10, 15 million. And then suddenly we had like this 6-year boom and I went to like 75 million. And that's the way it is. You don't get even, like the economy isn't an even thing. It does these jerks. And when it jerks up, you want to have some assets that take advantage of it. So the way you work is you make as much money as possible. You make sure you save capital, you invest that capital, and you hold it responsible for a rate of return. And if I were younger, I'd have bought real estate sooner. Like you could house hack. I had my first house. I had 2 roommates. It was a $77,000 house. I know they don't make them anymore, but it was it's worth $350,000 today. I still own it. I bought it in '95. And I think my battery's dying. What's going on here, bud? It's freaking out in my head. This guy going like louder and softer. Yeah. Okay. We're good. So that one, I would have 2 roommates. They paid me like $200 a month. I think my whole payment was like $780, $800 maybe. No, they must have been paying me $250 or $300 because I remember I was paying the lowest amount and I was living in the master, and I always thought that was a good deal. So that's house hacking. And so, yeah, and the sooner you start that, the better. I mean, you've all seen the compounding reports. The sooner you have assets, the better. And then get really good at something. It's all about people. Life's all about people. There's a saying that the people that manage the people manage the people that manage the things. So if you're a thing guy, like at an engineering company, it's not the brilliant engineers that end up the bosses. It's the ones that know how to manage those brilliant engineers, right? So being able to manage things is great, but learning how to manage people is better. And you're on that journey right now. Sales is the #1 skill to develop, I think, for all people, in terms of learning to get through life.
Awesome. So I want to shift. One of the things that a lot of, I think these younger students, but I know from life and all the individuals that I meet that this is something that goes on for people in their 30s, 40s, 50s. And it's the feeling of overwhelm, when you're like, I want to do this, but I want to do that. And, and you really have had an incredible track record of being able to be involved with a lot of things, have multiple businesses, as well as live a pretty awesome lifestyle. So the question, that some of these guys, multiple had posed is, how do you make time for those things? How do you manage your time? What are some key tips that you utilize to get it all done? You froze right now, so hopefully this comes back here. Yeah. Nope, it should be good. So while hopefully this wants to come back, let's put refresh on here. No, maybe. All right, so let's give it a second for him to come back. All right, so by the way, biggest takeaways so far.
To be focused on learning.
Cool, so be focused on learning. What else?
Notice self-doubt all the way down. So that needs to be like a sign.
Mm-hmm.
Like a slow person.
Be learning things.
Mm-hmm.
Always be learning something to learn something. And being resilient.
Yeah, and this is, by the way, this is a huge part. So I'm currently, I helped 2 years ago really design stuff. Last year, launch out the women's division for Tribe of Millionaires, which you see behind him. And it's just incredible as I watch these guys and I'm around these individuals, seeing like how much, like how focused they are on growing, like constantly. From reading, being in groups together, being around each other. And these are people who are very, very established, and their businesses pull in from several $1 million a year to 10 mil plus a year to, I've met some who are pulling in hundreds of millions per year, and a common theme among these guys. And as you talk to them, it's just, they're like, there's always things to learn. There's always things to get better, and really you guys having this foundation here as individuals, as young people, being able to have access, to be able to learn from people like Jacob, who's involved in masterminds and is also giving back. Myself, that I helped run the sister operation for what David founded years ago, and being able to really to link into people. I think about Ryan and what he's invested in himself in personal growth, and Mike Lanzetta, and Jonathan Schmitz, and so many of our understanding that as you keep growing, as you keep learning, like that's where the power comes, and it's something that'll serve you for a lifetime, not just for right now. So I think that's really important. I don't know if we'll get them back. Let me shoot over an email to his assistant. Well, I mean, if they're not on, they don't get it in the chat. So this is before.
No, this is analyst.
Let's see here. All right. Oh, there we go. We're back. All righty. Yeah, I can't hear you. We're here. We see you.
Okay, better?
Beautiful. All right, we were just debriefing some takeaways about what question were we just on? We were talking
It
about.
was a good question, but I forgot it already.
Oh, how to get it all done. Yes.
Oh yeah, sure. So I would go to these seminars and I'd come back with all these ideas and I'd sit down with my manager. I had a great manager then. His name was Mark Willis, and I'd say like, I'm going to do this, that, and the other. And I had 20 things, and then I got frustrated because I couldn't move them all forward. And I remember I sought coaching for him. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? I can't move them all forward. And he said to me, look, why don't you just take 3 things a quarter and add those to your process or your way of doing business instead of 30 things in a month, which is what I was trying to do. So, and then that was one. And then I had a second experience where I had well, actually he'd say do 1 or 2 things of the 30 and just get one done and then another done and then move to the next one instead of trying to do 20. So I did that. Then I went to a seminar for like 7 years out of 8 or 6 years out of 8, but the guy had an accountability built into it. And his accountability was you would write down 3 things you were going to do in the quarter. And then you have a punishment and a reward. And the punishment would be like, so one of the things I did is I wrote a letter to my worst enemy. There's a person I thought was trying to sabotage me. They're not relevant to me anymore. So whether they were or not back then, it doesn't matter. That's the story I was telling myself. And so I wrote a letter to them saying, dear John, the only reason I'm successful in business is because of you. I'm so grateful for your leadership and your inspiration. And I've enclosed a check for $5,000 to thank you for all of the wonderful things you've done for me. Now that's the letter I wrote to my worst enemy. I put the check in it and then I gave it to my peer partner. They had us build a peer partnership. So I gave it to my peer partner and said, if I fail to do in the next quarter, these 3 things, these 3 commitments, then you have my permission to send that letter. And I'm telling you, man, that stuff works. And again, this was built in a seminar framework. So I'm only giving you like 1 minute of what was a multi-year training. And we didn't start off with the hardcore punishments. It would be more like, I'll burn $100 bill or I'll get a massage. And then it got to where, okay, I'll take my family on a vacation or I'll send a letter to my worst enemy. One guy who was a Jewish guy wrote a letter to the Nazi party with a donation in it, like, and gave it. So imagine, like, you think he got his commitments done? Of course, right? He added that level of finality. And his point was, if you give your word and you just get a few amount of really important stuff done on a quarterly basis, 3 things in a quarter, and you really make that happen, you can change your life. And when you try to do 50 things at a time, yeah, they all might be useful, but you can't change your business life or your life in general by not doing them. So that was the second one. And then the third one is when I was in a dark night of the soul, where I was kind of having an identity crisis. I got shingles from stress. I was crying myself to sleep at night just because of how things weren't going well. This is back when the franchises I bought were all failing, and I was up in Dallas and my girlfriend broke up with me. You can imagine, like, it was all bad. And I was under a lot of stress. So I called the richest guy I knew at the time. And I'm like, what is your definition of success? And he told me something that I thought was brilliant, but since then I read a book about it. Like somebody did this back in the 20s or 30s. It was like a million years ago by Dale Carnegie. But anyway, he told me this. He said, every day I write down the 7 most important things I have to do the next day. And then I take the top 3 and I do 3. I do those 3. So it went from, it's really all about prioritization and learning to do the vital, most important stuff. I think when I started in business, if I had a list of 20, I would kind of do them in the order that I wrote them down. But now I flipped and I just do the most important stuff. And I still do that to this day. And after that dark night of the soul, I remember I was like, okay, the most important things for me are recruiting agents, hiring managers, and, creating, the vision for how they work. So recruiting, hiring, and creating a vision. So I just did that. I'm like, that's all I'm going to do is if I have 3 recruiting appointments today, I'm going to have those 3 recruiting appointments, which for you guys would be like sales, right? Because when I was selling, it was selling houses, was appointments with potential clients. When you own a franchise, it's potential appointments with potential agents that could join your company. It's the same thing, right? That's why learning how to pitch is so important. And then, 2 things happened is like, I got way better. I changed my identity. I literally changed my identity because of this crisis. And my results got better and I had more fun. So when I tried to do just the vital few, and that's why that book, The One Thing, is so useful because it talks to this, is that when I just did the few most important stuff, I got better results and I had more fun. And that was on the good side. On the downside, I remember sitting in my office one day in my house. I was in an apartment, I think at the time, and the electricity went off. And because I viewed paying my bills as like now no longer in my top 3 things to do, I just said, stop paying my bills, stop balancing my checkbook. And they turned off my power. I had some other interesting experiences like that where the basics of life weren't being taken care of. But then I also learned how to leverage, and leverage is a whole nother magical formula that at 19 and 20 you probably don't need to know about. But leverage is transformative, especially if you own a business. So then I just hired a bookkeeper to come pay my bills for $35 an hour. So for back then when my books were simple, 1 hour, maybe a week, maybe only 1 hour every 2 weeks, my bills were all being paid. So now I was spending $70 a month. And I could spend my time concentrating in spaces where I could make $4,000 or $5,000 a year from everybody that I recruited. So for that, if I got an extra 2 appointments in that month, that's the potential of an extra 10 grand a year, which is costing me $700 a year, if that makes any sense. So that prioritization, and today I'm super addicted to goal setting, and I can share with you guys my goals. Like there was a tape that I had all about goal setting. So what I do every year is I get up and I write down all my goals in the 8 gardens of life. So that's relationship, family, spiritual contribution, physical health, intellectual and growth. It sounds like 2. Let me just give it 1. Okay, so family, spiritual, physical, educational, lifestyle, tribe, and then financial, and then my career goals. So that's the 8 gardens of life. So in relationship, it's simply time, right? So I need to spend time with my kids and time with my wife to have a great relationship. So we do 4 vacations, 1 every quarter, etc. Spiritual is about giving back, making a difference. So I just give away a certain amount of money. I meditate and pray a certain amount of times. Physical is just working out. So it's a certain number of workouts. So I do 240 a year now. Educational is listening to podcasts, being on podcasts, giving back, reading books. Lifestyle is this. If you don't have an amazing lifestyle, your soul is told that there's no reason to live a great life, right? So if you're just like, and I used to do this, by the way, I would just save it all for another day, save all my money, save all my time, just work all the time. And then part of the identity crisis was like, I'm working my tail off. I'm not getting the results I want, and I'm not having any fun. And so like you go see the Grand Canyon, make sure every year you do something epic, because that epic energy comes into your life and you're kind of telling your soul, hey, this person has chosen to have an epic life. So we need to give this person more resources. The same, I think, with generosity. When I'm very generous, which, most people would probably say I'm pretty generous. The reason you're generous is because then the universe is like, hey, this guy needs more resources. He's not only living a big life, but he's also sharing a lot of abundance with a lot of people. So we need to give him more resources. And this may be a childish viewpoint or, kind of may not be true, but from my point of view, it's almost like karma. Like the more I just live and choose to embrace that, one of my favorite sayings is, why not me? So when I was a JV kid, I wasn't even a sports star, right? I always was annoyed because I'd try really hard. I just wasn't that great at sports. So I was always JV. That was my nickname in college, was JV, which is not that flattering, but I don't know where I was going with that. I got lost in that for a second. But now I believe in just the flow of the universe. Oh, I know why. So I'd always say, why not me? So why not me was a little saying I had
to like, why can't I have that? Why couldn't I be the quarterback of the football team? And it never served me to get a quarterback of the football team. But when you're having self-doubt and you're like, why, who am I to be a millionaire? If your answer is why not me, you can say, well, why not me? Why couldn't I be a millionaire? Why couldn't I be a billionaire? Why couldn't I be a billionaire that has incredible health and a great relationship with their kids and a great family? Why couldn't I be a multimillionaire that gives away all his money? So why not me, like, is a riddle that cannot be answered by the doubting brain or the piece of your brain that doubts. We all have doubting brain too, but why not me? Why not me? Because the doubting brain can't give you an answer to that, right? And then tribe, I told you about, that's who you hang out with. I'm constantly to this day looking for people that can sharpen the saw. Who can I spend time with that could bring me new information, new wisdom? One thing you notice about successful people is they're extremely purposeful, right? So just being in the presence of a highly purposeful person that doesn't waste their time, doesn't squander their time unwisely, is an energy you can pick up. So the tribe, to me, who I hang out with, who I pour back into, is very important. And by the way, I get just as much as energy helping guys like you who are up and coming as I do from hanging around a guy that's super successful. And then financial is obviously saving a certain amount of money. And then the business goals are just what I'm trying to do with the different assets. Now, because I spend so much time right now, I go to a beautiful coffee shop, I take my journal, and I go write down all the things that are going to inspire me for the next year, what's going to be great, what I'm going to do with my family, all this cool stuff. And then I put it into this format, which, by the way, you can get a rough format of it at thegoaltemplate.com. If you go to thegoaltemplate.com, you can download for free, kind of roughly what we do, or you can email me personally and I'll send you my more personal version of it. But with that, that's like my flight plan. So when I'm waking up every year now, or every day, like I look at this, you'll see Roman numerals all over it because I check it out like crazy, but this is my flight plan for my life. And when guys fly jets around or the big planes, they don't just fly to New York. They make constant micro adjustments. They have a flight plan that they fly on, and then they make constant micro adjustments as they fly. And I do the same thing. So I have this goal sheet that I'm super inspired by, and I encourage you guys to do that too. Take a journal, go someplace you're inspired, and write down all the stuff you want in life. Then categorize it, put it into the different gardens, and then prioritize it. And then each day, just wake up and do 1 or 2 or 3 things that move you towards your goals. It's impossible to fail if you build a system like that. It's not that complex. It's way easier than like, I don't know, calculus ever was for me, or learning, French. It was way easier than that.
Awesome. I have one last question that kind of goes right with that someone asked about, and I loved, and they said, what do you think about daily as you're going about daily? How do you, and then with your money and finances specifically, how do you view your money? Like, what does it actually represent to you?
Yeah, so daily I do the miracle morning. I do the 6 step, the savers, silence, affirmation, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing. I do that usually in bed. I can get 3 of them done in bed. I usually wake up at about 5:30. Silence or meditation, affirmation, today's gonna be an amazing day. If I have appointments, I think of myself walking through the door and just being buoyant and crushing the appointment. Visualization, I visualize me being of service to the people that I'm meeting with and the world being great. I have a Peloton for exercise. I read or listen to a book while I'm on the Peloton, so that kills 2 birds with 1 stone. And then what's the last one? I don't know. Scribing. I journal all the time. I'm an addicted journaler. And then what was your second question?
How do you view your money, and what does it represent to you?
So, yeah, great question. So money to me is just energy. It's like the blood of the society. So energy is blood, right? Money is just blood. So like it keeps the body moving. It keeps you alive. So I just try to create a vessel where there's a great deal of need for resources. So I have a lot of employees. I pay people well. I'm very generous. If people leave me for whatever reason, I try to pay them very well. Even if I can them and I terminate them, I try to overpay on the way out the door. If I see somebody that has need, I've been in airports before where I saw people crying because they couldn't get a flight. I'll just go buy them a ticket. If somebody is ahead of me in the coffee line, I love doing random acts of generosity. I give away a bunch of money to causes that inspire me and touch my heart. There's nothing I like more than like the universe finding a way for me to serve. Like one time this girl's dad got killed in a car accident up in Canada, like he burned to death in a terrible car accident. I was at this seminar and I heard her on the phone for like 20 minutes. I'm in the seminar and I heard her on the phone just trying to get her frequent flyer ticket moved. And it was just like driving me crazy. So I just walked outside. I got on the phone. I bought her a business class ticket for $1,500. I didn't have that much money back then, but it just seemed like that was the thing that needed to be done right at that moment. And it's absurd for somebody to not be able to fly home for their dad who just got killed in a car wreck. and having to fight the airlines to get her freaking ticket changed. So I just went in and I used money to cut through that situation, and money can be really good for stuff like that. So there's nothing better for me than an opportunity like that. I met a couple that were sitting in the airport. They'd been there 48 hours because the same thing. They were flying standby on cheap tickets. So I just bought them 2 tickets and flew them home. But little opportunities like that is great for money. We've got a lot going into Charity Water, which is clean water for the world. We've got a lot going into Habitat for Humanity in Austin. But also for work, it's like for buying stuff. I used to be afraid of the risks I took. And then my new fear is that I'm not taking enough risk. And that's not stupid risk. I'm very calculated in what I do, but there's no reward without risk. There's a direct correlation to the risk you take and the reward you get. By the way, knocking on doors, selling knives is a risk. And you guys, I encourage and applaud you for being brave enough to step into that. And you'll find that in life, those who take the most risk and keep stepping forward and be willing to be useful to the universe, I think have the most abundance. And I'm lucky to be surrounded by people like Hal Elrod that take risk all the time, and John Berghoff, and they're all just stepping out there all the time. They're all Cutco guys, because there's a direct correlation between how much you're willing to put yourself out there in the universe and the returns you'll get if you have integrity behind the process. And integrity doesn't mean perfection. It means just being honest, straightforward, a straight shooter, meaning well, and willing to take the heat and then take the lessons that come from taking the heat, and then building a foundation based on that experience of life.
Awesome.
David, thank you so much. I know we could sit here and probably ask 100 other questions, but I just want to say thank you for taking time out. Again, I know you've got a lot of stuff going on, and it's for these young guys to be exposed at such an early age. I wish I had the opportunity to hear from people like you when I was 18, 19. So it's fantastic.
My future is in those kids' hands. So I hope you guys go out and be massively successful, because literally when I'm retired, it's going to be you guys' job to run the world. So hopefully you'll do an amazing job at it. I'll bet you'll do better than us. But thanks for having me on, Kathy. Sorry about all the technical snafus, but that's.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you for going through it with us.
All right.
So,
love you guys.
appreciate you.
Well, bye-bye.
All right. Awesome.